18-year-old Nicola Payne said goodbye to her boyfriend and infant son, fastened her coat, and left for her parents' home just a short walk away. It was a bitterly cold December day, and despite it being early afternoon, a thick fog lingered. Nicola decided to take a shortcut through a patch of wasteland known locally as the Black Pad. She was briefly sighted entering the Black Pad by a local, the dense fog quickly engulfing her and obscuring her from view. Nicola was never witnessed emerging from the Black Pad and has never been seen again. 30 years of desperate searching later, and exactly what became of her remains unknown. This is the story of the disappearance and presumed murder of Nicola Payne. It was 1991, and Nicola was living with her boyfriend Jason and infant son Owen in Potters Green, Coventry, in the West Midlands of England. Nicola and Jason were living between the homes of their parents whilst their own home was being decorated and furnished. Nicola's parents lived in Henley Green, and just half a mile away, Jason's parents lived in Winston Avenue. Known by friends as Nikki, Nicola was born to parents John and Marilyn Payne. She was the youngest of 5 and had 4 protective older brothers in a large, close-knit family unit. Nicola was sociable and well-liked. Family and friends describe her as beautiful and vibrant, with her whole life ahead of her. She was a doting mother and cherished her young son. Her sudden vanishing on Saturday, 14th of December 1991, would spark the biggest investigation in Coventry's history. John Payne knew to expect his daughter at around midday. She'd been staying at her boyfriend's parents' house in nearby Winston Avenue, and John knew that the walk to his house would take Nicola no more than 6 minutes. John and his wife Marilyn began to feel uneasy as, after 30 minutes, their daughter had still not arrived. Looking out of the window, the couple could see that it was a foggy day and their sense of unease was increasing. After confirming with Nicola's boyfriend Jason that she had definitely left home, John would begin to search for his daughter. 2 hours later, and after finding no trace of Nicola, the panicked Paynes called the police. 80 detectives joined in the search alongside friends, family and members of the community. Nicola's presumed route was traced and woodland area was searched. Door-to-door inquiries were conducted in the local neighbourhood and an appeal for witnesses was made. Nicola's story featured on local news and missing persons posters were littered across Potters Green and wider Coventry. A heat-seeking helicopter flew over the area and bodies of water were searched. A witness came forward claiming to have seen Nicola near the Black Pad, a small area of unkempt wasteland often used as a shortcut by pedestrians and by dog walkers. This became the last known sighting of Nicola. Police reconstructed Nicola's journey from Winston Avenue to the Black Pad, hoping to jog the memory of anyone who may have been in the area that day. Jason Cook confirmed to police that his girlfriend had left home at around midday. She had taken nothing with her and had been carrying less than 40 pence in loose change in her pocket. Jason was quickly ruled out as a suspect. Despite these extensive search efforts and a far-reaching public awareness campaign, no trace of Nicola was found, and her case would begin to turn cold. Through the efforts of family, local media and police, Nicola's case would continue to receive coverage and subsequent leads would emerge. In '96, the garden of a property in nearby Woodway Lane was searched following a tip-off, though nothing was found. In 2001, a further tip was received and part of a canal was dredged. Again, nothing was found. In the same year, bones were found close to where Nicola was last sighted, and the Payne family were told to prepare for bad news. Testing would later prove these to be animal bones. Throughout the mid-2000s, Nicola's case would feature in a TV documentary, a UK-wide campaign by the National Missing Persons Helpline, and her image would feature on the sides of lorries in a campaign by Ford Motors. Over the years, the Payne family spoke regularly with the press, and in 2007, Nicola's then 16-year-old son Owen wrote a letter about his mother that his grandmother read out at a news conference. Owen wrote, "My one wish would be to have my mum found and to be able to understand the confusion, mystery and heartbreak of the last 16 years. I was 7 months old when my lovely mum Nikki went missing. Nan and Grandad always say that she had a loving bond with me which was noticeable to all. Sadly, I have no memories of her, and I envy my older cousins who remember her well, and they tell me what a fun-loving girl she was." A £10,000 reward was available at this time for anyone forthcoming with information leading to the discovery of Nicola's remains, or the person or people responsible. Further leads would emerge in the late 2000s, and in 2007 a 37-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of abducting and murdering Nicola, though no charges were brought against the man, and he was later released. It's not known who the man was, or what led police to believe that he may be involved in Nicola's case. Less than a year later, a team of 20 specialist officers utilising radar and X-ray equipment conducted a dig on the garden of a property in Winston Avenue. Again, nothing was found, and police confirmed that the property's current tenants were not suspects. Further leads were investigated in the 2000s. In 2012, after receiving an unspecified tip, police launched a search of Parkland off Purcell Road. The next day, 2 men aged 74 and 45 were arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to prevent the lawful burial of a body. Despite using ground-penetrating radar, metal detectors and cadaver dogs, nothing was found in this search, and the 2 men were subsequently released without charge. In December of 2012, West Midlands Police released vital new information in the case. Police appealed for the identification of 2 men sighted in the area of Nicola's disappearance. They were both described as being white, one being 6 feet, well built and wearing a brown leather jacket. The second man was believed to be 6 feet 3 inches tall, thin, with short brown hair. He was wearing a brown bomber-style leather jacket, a hooded sweatshirt and light blue jeans. The men's vehicle was a blue Ford Capri, which had a black spoiler, chrome wheels, and may have had a V registration. Police claimed that this was not new information, and that they had in fact been pursuing this lead since the initial investigation into Nicola's disappearance. Police seem to imply that they think they knew who the men were, but had been unable to eliminate them as suspects. From this appeal, 25 new leads were garnered. A year after this development, in 2013, police announced that new forensic tests were being carried out on unspecified items recovered years earlier. The new testing utilised cutting-edge forensic techniques by experts in DNA and palynology, or the study of pollen. From this, 3 people were arrested in connection with Nicola's case. These 3 men were later released. However, it was clear that police strongly believed they were closing in on the evidence required to bring about charges in the case. In January 2015, Nicola's case was blown open when 2 men were charged with her abduction and murder. West Midlands Police arrested Nigel Barwell along with his brother-in-law Thomas O'Reilly at their respective addresses, and both men were formally charged. Both Nigel and Thomas were 49 years old and lived in the Coventry area. Both men would be tried before a jury at Birmingham Crown Court in late 2015. It was at trial that many of the details of the lead that police were ultimately pursuing would become publicly known. At trial, it was revealed that Mr. Barwell and Mr. O'Reilly had been arrested in relation to the case just days after Nicola's disappearance in 1991. When questioned at the time, the men claimed to have been 15 miles away in the town of Rugby when Nicola vanished. They also claimed that when their car wouldn't start, they slept in the vehicle overnight in Rugby town centre before driving home in the early hours of the morning. The prosecution would claim that this alibi was false and had been concocted by the defendants. The prosecution also alleged that the men delayed appearing in witness identity parades, an allegation that the men denied. It was also revealed that a tent had been found by police in undergrowth in Mr. Barwell's back garden 5 days after Nicola's vanishing. This same tent was the at the time unspecified object that was subject a new forensic analysis in 2013. 20 hairs found in the tent were re-examined, and an expert concluded that 3 of the 20 strands were 900 million times more likely to belong to Nicola Payne rather than someone biologically unrelated to her. In short, strands of Nicola's hair were found in the tent recovered from Mr. Barwell's property. Instructions for the assembly of the tent were also found inside Mr. Barwell's car at the time of his initial arrest. Mr. Barwell's car was a blue Ford Capri. It was also alleged by the prosecution that Mr. Barwell had once made a pass at Nicola while at a local pub. Nicola rejected Mr. Barwell's advances and, the prosecution alleged, this was the motive behind the attack: sex and revenge. 2 witnesses known to the men would separately allege that the men had confessed to killing Nicola. One witness alleged that Mr. Barwell had said words to the effect of, quote, "I wasn't fucking about, I did that bitch Payne." Mr. Barwell denied having made these comments. Another witness, a friend of Mr. Barwell, alleged that he had been asked by the defendant to provide him with an alibi for December 14th. Again, this allegation was denied by the defendants. Piecing together how they believed the attack on Nicola unfolded, the prosecution produced 2 damning local witnesses. The first, a dog walker whose daily route tracked the edge of the Black Pad wasteland. This man claimed to see a figure hiding in a bush. At the same time, he could also hear the sound of a car engine nearby. The witness claimed to have walked through a gate and saw the car in question, a metallic blue Ford Capri. When the man was approximately 20 yards away from the car, he heard a woman scream. The sound, he claims, came from the direction of the bush where the figure had been hiding. A separate witness, miles away, claimed that on the afternoon of the 14th of December, she witnessed Mr. Barwell's car near a path leading to the River Sow. The witness recalled that Mr. Barwell and Mr. O'Reilly were standing at the rear of the vehicle, and that between them, perched on the lip of the open boot, was what appeared to be a full black bin bag. The prosecution claimed that what the witness had actually seen was the dead body of Nicola Payne wrapped in the black ground sheet of a tent. Acting as defence to Mr. Barwell and Mr. O'Reilly, Mark Dennis QC described police handling of the case as, quote, sloppy. The defence were able to prove that despite the tent being recovered 5 days after Nicola's vanishing, it was not catalogued in the exhibits log until a month later. There was no way of knowing where the tent had been stored during this time or in what condition. This, the defence claimed, increased the chance of evidence cross-contamination. Speaking on the stand, both defendants defended their alibi and denied any involvement in Nicola's disappearance. Mr. O'Reilly also claimed to have been the victim of repeated instances of intimidation, including an incident where he was blindfolded and bundled into a van by 3 men who threatened to cut off his fingers if he did not confess to the killing. Mr. O'Reilly even claimed to have been repeatedly threatened by police investigators. In November 2015, Nigel Barwell and Thomas O'Reilly were cleared by a jury of the murder of Nicola Payne. Speaking outside court, Nigel Barwell's daughter said that her family had suffered from suspicion and innuendo for 24 years. She said that the family were, quote, pleased this nightmare has finally come to an end. Our father and uncle always maintained from the onset of this investigation that they have had no involvement in the disappearance of Nicola Payne. West Midlands Police had this to say following the outcome of the trial. We're clearly very disappointed we have not been able to bring Nicola's killer to justice. This case will never be closed. We will continue to search for the people responsible for Nicola's murder and disappearance. They appealed for people to come forward with any information, no matter how small. Police later apologised to the Payne family for the mistakes they had made in the early investigation. England's double jeopardy law prevents a person from being tried again for the same crime, except in exceptional circumstances, the exception being the discovery of compelling new evidence previously unavailable to a prosecution. For the Paynes, the heartache and the search would continue. The investigation into Nicola's disappearance did not end with the outcome of the trial of Nigel Barwell and Thomas O'Reilly. And just over a year later, in 2016, a new witness came forward to claim that Nicola's body had been taken to Combe Abbey in Warwickshire, where it was disposed of. The witness claimed to have seen two men acting suspiciously near a fishing lake in the area around the time of Nicola's disappearance. An 8-week search of the 500-acre site was conducted and divers scoured the lake. Though some items were collected for forensic analysis, all were later found to be of no relevance to the case. In January 2018, the Paynes began working with a private forensic search team comprised of ex-military specialists. This new search, unconnected to the official police investigation, focused on an area around the previously searched Combe Abbey. At this time, an anonymous donor also offered a £100,000 reward, leading to the discovery of Nicola's body. The only item of note found during the renewed search was a boot that was later found to not have belonged to Nicola. In January 2019, West Midlands Police announced that it was working with a specialist underwater search team to search a stretch of canal between Coventry and Rugby. This canal was searched again in February 2020. Neither search produced anything. As recently as May 2020, the Paynes were advised by police that suspected human remains had been found next to the River Avon in Barford. There are no follow-up reports on this development, though 15 months later, I think it's safe to assume that these remains did not belong to Nicola. Publicity of Nicola's case continues to this day, and in 2020, an online campaign supported by local celebrities using the hashtag Nicola91 was launched. Also in 2020, British investigator Mark Williams Thomas announced that he and his team had been working on Nicola's case for months, and that a documentary and podcast were in the works. 30 years later, and after dozens of false leads, the Payne family do not believe that Nicola is alive. All the family want now is to find the remains of their daughter, sister, mother, and to receive closure. 18-year-old Nicola Payne was last seen walking near Winston Avenue in Potters Green, Coventry, at around midday on Saturday the 14th of December 1991. Nicola was of slim build and had curly brown hair. She was wearing a brown leather jacket, brown trousers and brown boots. Nicola is presumed to have been abducted and murdered shortly after. If you recall seeing anything or think you may have any information that could aid police in their investigation, please call West Midlands Police on 0121 626 5000 or Crimestoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111.